Hi, this is Charles Cabell, and I wanted to show you Musket and Tomahawks. It's a great game that I've just recently discovered that's very easy to play. It's got a great rule book. It's very easy to make the miniatures, and it's very easy to teach. You could teach anybody 8 years old how to play this system. There's a lot of flexibility in the system, a lot of different things that can happen, and I'm going to talk about that in the video. But first I wanted to talk about how to build a squad. And in the back of the book there's a very easy guide that says, you know, a squad of these guys cost you about 10 points a piece, and all the different features on it. I'll just go ahead and show that to you real quick. So you'll see the special features, the type. You can do regulars or irregulars, riflemen, minutemen, all kinds of special functions here. And what happens is after you've built up these point-based armies, you assign the cards according to the rule book how many cards they get. So British irregulars will get 4 cards. And you'll notice each one of these cards get 1 action each. And then like an American irregular group, they might get 4 cards. So we'll put those 4 cards here. The Indians will get, let's say they get 4 cards. And the rule book clearly tells you how many each one is supposed to get. And then you might add in some event cards. So you can add some events that happen in the game. And there's also some special cards like this that mean a leader is activated or a troop. So you could use this card. So you take all these cards for every troop that's on the board here and you just shuffle them all together. And this creates the activation deck as far as who goes first. So you'll draw a card, and the irregulars will be activated, that whole unit, and they get to do 1 action. So your actions consist of moving, firing, or shooting. I'm sorry, moving, firing, or reloading. So since it is a musket-based game, if you fire a musket, you've got to reload. So if you fire, you're going to be empty, and you won't be able to react to a situation. You've got to hope that your card comes up soon, and you're able to reload. And then using cotton balls or anything you want to use, if you say a unit has fired, you just put a white puff of smoke to show that he's unloaded in front of that troop. So after he's done his action, whatever it may be, you'll draw the next card. So now we've got the irregulars, which are the British. They will be, those Americans there, wasn't it? So they'll perform an action. So they can decide to move, fire, or reload. They're already loaded right now. They don't have a white ball on them. And so they'll decide to move up. The Americans players can't do anything about that. All right, so now we have an event, and we'll look up the event, but we're going to skip that for now. Now a leader, the commander of the group, can be activated, or any one of his units in his command radius. So he can pass that to one of these troops and have these guys reload. That is their action, and the Americans are now reloaded. It's the British players, or the Indians' turn, and now they get to do an action. So that is the sequence of play and how it works. Again, there's only 3 types of things that can happen. For the most part, there are some little exceptions that are pretty cool. So as I said, the rule book costs about 50 bucks. The different factions are French, British, Indians, Americans, German mercenaries, and even civilians are in the game. It's got a nice table of contents, which I think is really important in a rule book. It's very nice to have. There's lots of different weapons you can have in the game. Muskets, rifles, bows, pistols, tomahawks, and a few others. I think there's even some grenades. There's some nice flavor text in the beginning here. So what you'll need, it goes over what you need. You'll need the figures, just like I talked about, and typically about 10 to make a unit. You'll need the rules, the troop types, understanding officers, markers, dice, the cards, and rulers to measure. So each unit has special things about it. Some can move faster, so it has movement rates. It has aggressiveness. This is for melee purposes, so when you get into a melee battle, you and your opponent will both be rolling dice to determine who's the winner of that. And then also defense in melee, which is your saving throw. Marksmanship is basically your ranged attacks. And then you have special traits that can be attached to units, which is very cool. So the cards explain how many cards. If you have a troop of regulars, you get 2 of the cards. If you have irregulars, you get 4. provincials get 2, militias get 3. And then also you have the Forward Boys card, which we talked about, which activates a leader or a unit. The game turn sequence is very easy to understand. You draw a card, you activate a unit, they perform their actions, next card. Now one thing that's nice about the actions, if you get 2 actions in a row, you can do 2 moves, or you can do a fire reload, or you can do something called vigilance, which lets you do opportunity fire, and it's an action in reserve. You place a marker on that unit and they get to react to somebody moving in front of them. So here's the actions again: move, shoot, reload. The action sequence can be any one of those 3 in any order, as long as you can't fire unless you're loaded, so you might have to reload the first. Facing and line of sight is important in the game, so you can get bonuses for attacking somebody from behind. It's a very, very cool game. There are ambush and demi markers in the game. There's also hidden movement, which really you can see you use a coin or a marker, which is online at their website. And you can print those out and use those. You could also print these markers out over here and play the game with that to try it out and see if you like the game first. It has spotting rules in the game, so you can't shoot somebody until you can see them. Since it is the French-Indian War, there's a lot of terrain in the way, a lot of mountains, rocks, things like that. But if you can see somebody straight up in the open, you can see and shoot. If you have the range, you can see up to 96 inches away. So there are modifiers here. If somebody has shot plus or minus, has a black powder marker in front of it, you go +2 on the marker. If they're mounted on a horse or an artillery gun, they're easy to see because they're a larger unit. If they're in an Indian or an irregular, they're harder to see because they're more hidden in the woods and things like that. They're used to that type of warfare. So that plus or minus will move left or right on this column here. Shooting and reloading we talked about already. The first thing you'll do when you're able to shoot at somebody is roll to hit. Each unit type has a number that is trying to roll. For example, I think the British soldiers have to roll a 5+ in order to hit somebody. The range is 12 inches. So if you have 10 guys within 12 inches of somebody, you can roll 10 dice, and you're looking for 5s or better. Now there are modifiers that apply to this. If somebody is longer than 12 inches, that'll be a -1, so you'll be looking at 6s. If they're shooting at extreme range, more than 24 inches, that's 24 inches. So the interesting thing about rolling a 7 on a d6, what that means is you're going to roll a d6, and if you hit a 6 is always a hit. On the next die roll, when you're actually deciding if you take casualty or not, the number that you're looking for, you're going to take a -2 on there. And it works out really good. I was kind of surprised. I played it last night. I've played in other games where you roll a 6 and you have to roll another 6 in order to hit, but I like the way the modifier works in this game. So there's all kinds of modifiers according to shooting and how that works. You've got the roll to kill, which I talked about. First you hit somebody, and then you roll for casualties, and then you remove casualties. After the casualties are removed, then you do a reaction to check to see if the enemy stood. And what that means is, does the enemy stand there for another fight, or do they back up, or do they just run away? And that's under reactions here. So melee, you go base-to-base contact with somebody, and you're going to roll dice, and your enemy's going to roll dice, and you keep rolling dice against each other until somebody eventually will run away from the fight or be eliminated. You can make your own terrain for this game, which is really nice. So you can use all kinds of creative things. This is a pine nugget that's been painted gray on one side and brown and black on the other. And you could just use that like a rock on the field. Some other ideas are going to Hobby Lobby and get some kind of sticks to make fences. So, I mean, there's all kinds of creative ideas you can do. And there's some ideas in the book here as well. Terrain and line of sight, there's basically, I think, like 3 different types of terrain. There's light cover, heavy cover, and dense cover. You can also have buildings in the game. It talks about that. It's just very, very easy to understand. The weaponry, there's different types of weapons you could have. Grenades, lances, swivel guns, artillery, So here's the officers page, and it talks about the traits: regulars, Indians, irregulars, provincials, and militia. And that's where you get your cards and things like that. So let's see here. There's also a random scenario generator, which is really nice. The combatants, it talks about the different types of factions in the game. The British Army, here we go into the details about the special units and how you can build those units, what their special traits are and what their optional traits are in the game as well. German mercenaries, the French Army, so if you want to go with the French, and then there's Americans, there's Indians, you build up all this. There's civilians, which I think is kind of cool. I'd like to check that out myself. Different types of scenarios you can do. Side plots, which are sound kind of cool, like adding a storyline onto it that you don't really expect. And then random events. So you roll 2d6, one of them is a different color than the other, and you basically match up to that. And that should be it. These are very nice player's reference in the back of the book. It's a very easy, very fun game. Like I said, anybody can play this game. It's a lot of fun. I think it will play multiplayer well, even though you're still playing Brits against America. The Indians are either on the American side or the British side. All kinds of fun stuff you can do with this. And I see a lot of things happening out of this. The French-Indian War is not one I would expect to have bought a game for, just because it didn't seem like there'd be a lot of rule sets out there that I could use the same minis for. But I like the system. I like how the cards work. I like the interesting and unique things. And I did write a list here of cool things that you can do. Cool things in this game. Cover. Very cool. Facing. So not a lot of games with this scale, in my opinion. I wouldn't expect facing. Hidden units. Officer talents. And they can be natural talents according to their faction, or they can be random talents on a die roll. Units have traits. Special characteristics about them. You have random events in the game. You have a scenario generator. It's good for multiplayer. You have weather that could be in the game. There's also side plots, which we talked about, have the story effect in the game. There's boats. You can have fog. You can play at dusk. You can play at dawn. There's even events that cause duels, and there's spotting as well. So, it's not a history-specific game, but there is a lot of history in this game, and you can make historical scenarios. So, you can either play it kind of gamey and just do the random scenario thing, or you can actually make historical scenarios. Seems like it'd be a lot of fun. The history players, typically, there's going to be one side that's going to have more power than the other. The rules are easy to read, has a great table of contents, easy to look things up. The only thing I got confused on when I read the book was the cover rules, but I was thinking that the modifiers were applying to a dice, and they don't. It says nothing about dice in there, and I just played so many other games that I just assumed that it was modifying a dice. I hope you get a chance to check this out. Make sure to Google how to play Musket and Tomahawks if you want to see more of the game in action. But this is a good freshen up, like learn how the basic troops work before you watch that one. Hope you get a chance to play the game, and don't forget, if you do want to try the game, you can always print out the markers online and just give it a whirl. Take care.